To watch it in their own time.
Sure. We've got to get on. We've got to get a couple more very special guests who've managed to come here this evening. At the back of the auditorium, I believe, is Professor Sid Watkins. There he is. Sid, thank you so much for making it. I know you haven't been well recently. It's great to see you again. Your thoughts on this extraordinary film that we've seen this evening?
Well, it's a very difficult film for me, of course, because I knew Senna so well, and we went through so many difficulties together. So I think it's a great movie. I've seen it twice, in the early stage and in the later stage. It always makes me a bit cheerful. And I like to look on the happier side of Senna's life, such as the time when I went to Edinburgh to pick him up, to drive him to our home in Coldstream in Scotland. And when we got home, I had a big old yellow Mercedes 380. And we got in the house, and he said, "Professor, I want you to know you're a very good driver, and a very safe driver, because that you are painfully slow."
So there's a line from you in the film where you talk about his humility. That's the thing that isn't very common in racing drivers. And that's obviously the quality you really value in him.
Well, he got a facial palsy at one stage before he signed up for Lotus. And I always remember he couldn't shut one of his eyes. And Peter Waugh rang me up and said, "You know, we're going to sign Senna up, but he can't shut his eye." So I said, "So what's wrong with that?" So he said, "Well, he's a racing driver." So I said, "Well, don't you think we should have both eyes open?" Anyway, he got signed up, and during the terminal stages of his facial paralysis, he came to my office in the London hospital, and I got a very tough secretary there, and he said, "I'm Senna, I've got an appointment with Professor Watkins." So she said, "Well, you go down and sit down with everybody else." So he went down very quietly, and then she went down to get the next patient, was a little old lady who was paraplegic and in a wheelchair, and she started to wheel the wheelchair to my office, and Erton jumped up and he said, "No, let me wheel the wheelchair." And he moved the dear old lady into my office, and he said, "Good morning, Professor," and he went back and sat down with us. And that was a very remarkable act of humility and humanity. And that's how I remember it.
Thank you so much for coming, Sid. It's great to see you. Professor Sid Watkins there, another trustee of the Mechanics Trust, and we've got one more very special guest here. I hope he's still here, because I know he came in. And you will recall at the very end of the film, Mark Fogarty, our Australian colleague, asks who's the greatest driver he ever raced against. Of course, we all sitting in the room expected him to talk about Prost. He didn't mention Prost. He mentioned Terry Fullerton, the 1973 kart champion. I'm delighted to say, somewhere in this room is Terry Fullerton. Where are you? There he is. Come on, please. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. It's fantastic to to see. What does it feel like at the end of a feature film like that, which has already won awards in America, could be an Oscar winner, for the greatest driver who ever lived, to describe you as his greatest rival?
It was great.
What was he like to race against back in those days?
Very hard to sum up quickly, but the outstanding feature was determination, really, and a very strong will to win, combined with sort of some very fast driving. You know, he was a kid in those days, 17, 18 years old when I raced against him. He hadn't really turned into the man we saw on the screen tonight. But you could tell he was special, and you could tell he was going places. And it was an honour for me to drive with somebody like him as well. So.
Didn't he take it out on you once when you beat him in a real head-to-head race? And didn't he take it out on you afterwards when you were a bit relaxed?
Yes, he did actually. Yeah, I'd actually won a race the day before at Jesolo near Venice in Italy, and I passed Ayrton on the last lap. It was a very long race. It was a very hard race, a very tough race for both of us. I think it was the last of 3 finals that day, and whoever won the last final was going to win the championship. I managed to pass him on the last lap, and we touched as I went past, and he went on 2 wheels and dropped back a little, and I won the race by maybe 8 or 10 yards. And it was it felt like a great victory for me. It felt like something very special. And he was obviously pretty pissed off, pretty upset about it. So we didn't speak at all that evening. And the next morning I was messing around with my mechanic by the swimming pool at the hotel. And I could see Ayrton sitting on one of the seats by the pool, looking seriously pissed off actually. And I wasn't quite sure why he was sitting there, but we continued to mess around and this and the other. And then at a certain point he just jumped up and ran at me and launched me into the pool. Quite violently. And laughed and walked away. And that was kind of, you know, indicative of how seriously pissed off he was. And that was him getting his revenge. So that's how I remember it.
Was it hard not to compare yourself to him when you went on and won those 3 world championships and all the success and everything that happened? I mean, you obviously had the talent to beat him in karts. Did you ever compare yourself to him when you went on?
I suppose it did sort of hold a light for me in myself. I did think, yeah, I could have possibly gone and done well in cars and been successful and famous and rich, etc. None of those things now. But so. I'm very happy he went on and did it. I was pretty happy with my career, although it was, you know, a much smaller affair than Ayrton's. But I was pretty happy with my career and my life, so
good for you.
I'm good.
And the film captures the spirit of the man that you knew, that you raced against, all those special times, the pure racing back in the early days.
Yes, I think it does. I think it's a great film, by the way, fantastic. Second time I've seen it, and it's better the second time as well. And yeah, very, very good. Best motor racing documentary I've seen by a long, long way. I'm not quite sure if it's because I know him or whatever, but it's a great documentary, really thoroughly enjoyed it. And it does capture the guy that I raced against. But you've got to remember, as I say, he was 17, 18, 19 years old when I was racing against him, so he was turning into a man, really. And there you see a very confident man, especially after he won his championships. And he wasn't quite that confident in those days. But I'm sure it represents the way he was. Those early pictures of him at the car meetings, you know, that is exactly how I remember him. A young, fresh-faced kid, you know, eager and full of ability. So,
just something from us. We've not met Terry before, which is kind of a big thing for us. But most of the people we've heard speaking, we've met. But Manish and I have been living with this film for quite a few years, and you know, these 2 things came together. As they do in movies, you know, we saw this interview from Ayrton just before the race in Australia in 1993. Which came from FOM, and then somewhere else in an archive in France you saw the Super 8 footage. And actually the footage you're describing of the race you catch him on the last corner, I've seen all of that. And I've seen him looking really pissed off giving an interview in Italian, telling everyone how he was robbed of the championship. And in a longer cut he'll be in there hopefully. But it's amazing for us to actually meet, because I know you saw the film while we were both away. So,
we also have a nickname for you that we always use, and I think Poulet comes from.
And you give an interview, you said a black man is a good man. Because you're always dressed in black, and you do a particular interview where you said that, and the black man is a good man. We know more than... Yeah, it's great to meet you.
Okay, and you too guys. Great film, great.
Terry Fullerton, ladies and gentlemen.